All right. Welcome back to track 2, which is called Confuse Me Again. What comes to your mind when you hear the words confuse me again in a relationship and hopeful and love relationship kind of an album?
Not specifically hopeful.
Yeah, it's definitely not hopeful. Confuse me again. It's like, you want someone to confuse you? I don't get this. What's going on?
It sounds habitual.
What's that?
It sounds habitual confusion.
Yeah, well, good. That'd be a good another song we should write later. Habitual confusion. So, a backstory on this song: Loulita and I had a guilty pleasure where we were actually watching. Well, okay, let me start here. A long time ago, I heard a clip on YouTube, and I didn't know who it was, but it was a famous couple that was fighting, and they had it on tape. And it was, I won't say who they are because I want to, keep you in suspense. So it was the man who was very calm and very kind of despondent, and the female who was just, you always, you never, you're always this. And they were just going back and forth and cussing each other out. And I just thought I got hurt that there was no spirit of love, or in my words, the Holy Spirit that connected my wife and I. It was just devoid of that. It was confusing. It wasn't clear. It was not obvious that they loved each other, but they just kept on going in and out of this negativity. And all of a sudden they go, oh, but I love you, and all these, and all of a sudden another fight would come out. You're like, what in the world is going on? And it just made me want to write a song from that perspective. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know what the situation was. And I wanted to write a song from that perspective of what they must be feeling like. Anyone want to guess who that couple is? They were in a very lengthy trial, and it was widely
my grandparents
shared.
Okay,
Yeah, it was in a court trial and was all over the world. A phenomenon. It was the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. But I didn't know what was going on when I wrote this song. Until then, Loulita and I got into this, like, watching it together, eating popcorn and chatting each other. Oh my gosh, she's such a narcissist. I can't believe, oh my gosh, I can't believe it did it. So this is where this song came from. And I tried to embody it, not in my own situation, but as if I was in those two people's shoes. And you'll hear the male vocal and the female vocal from the two characters that I interpreted where they were at this time, and how I felt the solution could be given at the end. So this is Confuse Me Again.
I don't like confusion. It makes me wanna run. You give me your opinions like you're the jury and the judge. Talking to yourself now. I've tried but given up. I'm quiet 'cause you're so loud over things I've never done. Oh, shouldn't love be more obvious and less complicated? You confuse me again. I'm losing a friend. Wasn't it us who said only love wins, only love wins?
It's too much to digest.
It's pretty real.
Kind of brilliant how you encapsulated that whole feeling and emotion and the kind of situation between those two people, which is, they're not alone in those problems. It's worldwide anyway. Maybe not to the extent of where they were at, but yeah, kind of genius, really.
Yeah, we talked about being eloquent as songwriters, and this is saying so much in such a small space. I mean, we're just getting into this thing, and you know, it's pretty weighty. I'm reminded of an article that I just read about 18 things that couples do wrong when they're in an argument. And that pretty much covered half of those, you know, from the judgments, the assumptions, the I'm quiet because you're so loud, over things I've never done, you know, you always do, you never. Oh, that's, man, it's it got real quick with this first verse.
Yeah. And I don't like confusion. It makes me want to run. How many times do you feel like when there's something that's just like, okay, this is awkward, you go into a party and like, you're like, I don't know anybody here. I just want to get away. There's an anxiety there. Whenever there's a confusing, I feel where the spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom, right? And that's where I was trying to come at. When there's confusion, you want to run away from whatever it is. But some people in this situation stick with it and have hope and optimism that it'll fix itself. And it unfortunately sometimes never does.
I was going to say, what was Aron going to say? He was going to say something.
Oh, was I?
I don't know.
Hey, you said you were, so you better have something.
And then I cut you off.
Your hot take.
Well, my memory kind of lasts 2 seconds, and then
I think you were saying you're about to say, when do I start playing drums in this song?
yeah. I do love the line, shouldn't love be more obvious and less complicated?
Oof.
I mean, kind of that sums it up. And I guess I definitely, you know, when you find words for something that is in people's head. I think that's what great songwriters do. They voice things that you haven't verbalized or couldn't quite put your finger on it or couldn't really bring it out. And those two lines, basically, it's very simple, but wraps it up nicely, you know, in a book.
Yeah, my favorite line in that is, "You're talking to yourself now."
Yeah.
How many times you just like, I've tried to have a conversation here. I'm giving up. There's so many people who feel that they're talking to nobody and no one's listening to them or hearing them. And the fear there is, well, you should, and it's like this obligation to listen when you really don't, you know, from past experience that it's not going to go anywhere. And that's why escapism, alcoholism, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of stuff to help that keep people in a place where they can hear all that and just mask it from being reality. So I know I went deep there, but
yeah, I mean, the confuse me again is like, this is a cyclical behavior.
Yep.
You know, I'm trying to get away. I'm trying to avoid this, and you keep pursuing this, and we're in the crazy cycle again. And I think, guys, I don't think this is a named genre, but there's such a needed space for us to talk about these things in the church, in the Christian music, because our emotional health needs care, needs to talk about these things. And it's, again, the holding your feet or your heart to the fire to see, so it could be warm, so things could be purified. It's not a get into a prayer line and get tidied up with a supernatural miracle here, which can sometimes happen. But this is the stuff that determines the fruit of our life. This type of root. Yeah.
It's work. That's amazing. Yeah. Work is not what Christians like to hear. They like to hear easy miracle that I wake up one day and everything's fine. And that's not reality, because there's process with everything. And God is a God of order. He's not a genie where things are just like, oh, now I'm perfect. And don't we all know that for sure? All right. So
And this is the beauty, just real quick.
Yeah.
This is the beauty of being an independent artist, though.
Yeah.
Because especially the Christian music genre, the labels, this doesn't fit their
No.
criteria.
Mm.
And this is the freedom that we have to say these things. What do you think about that, Aaron? What are your thoughts on that?
We don't like to. We like to look good. We don't like to sort of put things out there that is not very pretty, or is be struggling with. But the silly thing is, we all do. It's one of those things that is just, I mean, I think if you're in a relationship, this happened to you, unless you like two people who just completely and utterly the same, and your communication is the same, your thinking is the same, then the Lord bless you. But for the rest of us, these are things. When you read the Psalms, and there's just so much moaning and so much anger and so much. And
Yeah.
Where are you, God? Yeah.
That's supposed to be sort of like the worship book. And then now you just water it down. Like, no, I don't need that stuff. Just the pretty things, the happy things, and they have their place, of course. But,
Yeah, they do.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's almost like, what I like about this is that you don't feel alone, because especially if you talk about Christian environment, you try to bring your best, you try to show that you are all together, because you have God, and supposedly that means that you are, walking the walk and doing the right things, and you've got the Holy Spirit, so therefore you have to have it together. And so the reality is that these things happen to all of us.
Yeah, and in waves, Aaron, because there's times we have victory and we can walk with this, oh my gosh, I'm doing well, and not feel guilt about that, because
and 2 days later
you have an argument, and you're like, because so many times, and I'm the kind of person that's always up and happy and optimistic, whenever I have like a frown or people can see that I'm not doing well, what's wrong? You're not smiling. Yeah. And you're like, shut up. Like,
you won't be smiling in a minute.
I know. You want to see that?
I also think, though, within a lot of Christian spaces, that there isn't enough space for lament, because one of the things I've realized as I've gone through my own journey of lament, and I've done a lot of lamenting, a lot of grieving through therapy, is that when you lament and you grieve, it actually helps you come to a place of acceptance. And when you come to a place of acceptance, that's what actually helps you heal. And so, like, there isn't enough space within, I feel, the Christian world where people are given an opportunity to really lament over what's happened or what's happening in their lives, to really come to a place of acceptance. Because when you come to a place of acceptance, you can then do something about it. But until you've accepted what has actually happened, you can't do anything about it. You're stuck in that place of grief and sorrow. But that process is part of, like, our healing, and it's getting to that place of, I've got to cry about this, I've got to feel frustrated about this, confusing me again. I've got to go through this process to get to a place of acceptance. This is where I'm at, this is where we're at. Okay, so what are we going to do about it? Do you know what I mean? And so, like, I feel like there isn't enough of that within. Everybody just wants everything to be happy and smiley and bubbly. But I have found the greatest amount of healing is taking place in my life as I've lamented and as I've grieved. and I've walked through that process and I've gotten to the other side of it. And now I feel the joy and the happiness and the peace and all of those wonderful things.
Mhm.
But I had to walk a very dark path just to get there.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, I feel like these songs are pouring into that journey, that darkness, that moodiness, that heaviness.
Mhm.
And I guess people would say, "Oh, but why share it?" But that's the thing. Then you know that you're not on your not
Yeah.
alone. It's
Yeah.
because we all have similar experiences to different degrees, but humanity is pretty simple when you break it down, and it's pretty universal regardless of who you are, where you live,
Yeah.
race, color, gender. There are core things that sort of connect us together.
Mm.
And sharing specifics, it's not to like, oh, feel sorry for me, or
Mm-mm.
no, you share it because, well, it's your life, and you ideally want other people to see you and understand you, and share your life with other people. But also it just shows to other people that it's okay to feel this, it's okay to lament, it's okay to, and in fact probably it's healthy.
And that's what David knew too, because he didn't hide behind it. And David DeMarco, you said something in a message that I heard you speak at your home church, where the guy who got healed in Bethesda, right? He had a mat that he laid on all the time. And when Jesus told him to get up and walk, he said, "Take your mat." And I never understood that until David kind of said, you need to bring where you've been with you.
That's amazing.
You need
Wow.
to bring your testimony with you. If you don't, people aren't going to believe the miracles of God.
Yeah, that's
Right.
so good.
And so I'm like, this is why we write from a place. I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
We're going to write from a place of desperation, in a place where you were all honestly not be able to sleep or eat, or, and just be in that real moment, get a snapshot of it and not stay there, but take it with you and say, this is where I've been. And I think it's the best tool for any person who wants to bring someone else into a relationship with God with authenticity, and not say you have to. No one wants that. Let's be honest. Anyway, we're getting off on a tangent here.
Well,
But
the testimony is it's your connectimony in a sense. We're connecting with people where we've been and where we are, and as Aron and Loulita have said, it's at our core, being a human being, one of the deepest needs that we have is to be seen and heard for who we are.
Yeah.
And we've got to get more comfortable being vulnerable in the church, where outside the church they are, and they're writing about it, and those songs are widely celebrated. I mean, look at Billie Eilish's, most of her catalog, and for some reason we tend to speak to things and write about things in the church when we're on the other side. So we're speaking into it back to people that are going through it. And I would say, if Job was in our church today listening to these songs, how would he feel? Joseph in the prison, how would he feel? But then you play songs like these, the lamenting, and the chaos of it, and the process of it, where the greatest connection and character is made in this fire. And it's just it's a broken but beautiful thing that new things give birth out of it.
And you write these, David, knowing with God you will get out of it.
100%.
So there's no fear in coming through the fire here. And I think this is a good segue to Loulita's part, where we heard the male part, which, like, I don't like confusion. It makes me want to run. You're so loud. That's why I'm quiet. Right. And we're going to see the other side of why she's doing what she's doing. All right. Here we go.
I don't like your silence. It makes me wanna scream. You're so calm and collected, like you never fight.
Well done, Aaron.
Yes. Great job.
Massive well done, Aaron.
Man.
Well, this is staying out of the way. Really, is the stopping Brian wanting to put more things in there than necessary.
Well, I did ask you to put bass at the end there because it needed that bottom end. I felt like
Yeah.
Because sometimes just an acoustic doesn't have, when you're listening to it in big speakers, you don't have that feeling of like rumble where you're like, oh, I get that from in my soul, you know?
I quite like the piano is a bit weird.
Why?
Because it's so like up there. It's very sort of it's almost like fancy.
Yeah.
Like very pretty. In again, same thing. The
Contrast.
It confuses you a little bit, doesn't it?
It's a bit confusing. Musically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Listening to that piano, it's like you are too happy. Like, what's wrong with you?
But here's the ending. It wasn't it us who said only love wins.
Yeah.
Only love wins. It's the statement at the end that is the stamp. Yes. So what are we going to do about it? And that's the hope. That's the one step away to ease the pain. Only love wins. Yes. Only love wins. So
and I guess it's like an underlying, if you give up on somebody, it's kind of like what the second verse is like, you never fight for me.
Ooh.
The resignation. But throughout the song, there's always that conflict of trying to find common ground or find a solution, find an understanding.
Oh, you hit a great point. She's saying you never fight for me. So if you're not going to fight, I'm going to fight you. And I'm going to yell at you. If you're not going to fight, I'll take your place and do it for you. I mean,
if you give up on somebody, you stop yelling. You stop sort of actively taking part in the argument because you're like, whatever.
Yeah.
So there's still something you can tell. There's something there, and you really in this situation because you care.
Yeah.
So that's with little instruments as possible. You try to sort of convey that strange dance that we play when we like hitting each other metaphorically.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same time, you do it because you love the other and you try to work something out or make it better. And it's just unfortunate that it's often quite painful to go through.
What other connections are you guys stewing on when you look at the lyrics and you kind of the last?
I don't know. It just makes me think about my relationship with Joe, because there were so many times in our life, like I say, at the beginning of our relationship was not plain sailing, and there's a number of reasons for that, which I won't go into. I won't bore you with the details. But there were definitely moments when I felt like he just wasn't fighting for me, and I could really relate again to those lyrics. Like I felt he wasn't fighting for me because he was calm and collected.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it's only later on when, we started to just talk and then unpack our past and kind of like, untie all the knots.
You're jumping ahead.
I really actually understood that he all along he was fighting for me, but I wasn't in a position to receive his fighting for me.
Yeah, the way he does it.
Yeah. So like I couldn't recognize that that's what he was doing. So I would fight with him. We wouldn't scream or anything like at each other, but I would fight and get frustrated with him because I felt like he wasn't fighting for me, but actually all along he was fighting for me. I just couldn't see it.
Isn't that the perfect mirror of what God is doing, right? We always say, where are you? He's like, I've been here the whole time. Yeah. This is where I always get so giddy when I can connect the relationships and we're as a shadow of God's love. And it's a shadow of it. It can't be all because our heads would explode. but he's giving us a glimpse, like an analogy, like a parable of what it's like to be him and what he must go through as a emotional God, as a being that created us in his image. We have a God who can sympathize. I mean, come on, he's not some distant thing. So, and David, I know that you're stewing over it, but what's your take on the second half?
Well, just like any message that's trying to be conveyed, there's two voices. There's the voice of the person singing or speaking, and then there's the voice of the listener, the voice of me telling me what the speaker or singer is saying. And I don't like your silence. It makes me want to scream. You're so calm and collected, like you never fight for me. And for me, that triggers more of how we use silence as a weapon to pull walls, put walls up, to stone wall. And it's so emotionally painful that you're screaming internally. And sometimes we misunderstand that, as Loulita said, as we take silence as, well, you're manipulating me, when it's completely not that. So there's again, paradox and complexity in this that just puts us in a place to ponder, to just take time and extract just the goodness here. And eloquent, very eloquent, well said, and deep. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And then when it comes down to it, we don't want confusion. We want freedom. And that's where we're going. But how can you achieve that with such a dumb and, a drum and gloom type of, lyric? And we're all sitting here realizing that we have so much that we can find. That's why I said in Hold Me Like Your Home, there's so much more, there's so much to find to set our souls on fire. So I hope that we can continue to do that and not just look at a song oh, that was good. Like, I heard a quote and it was really, I asked one of my favorite artists, I got to interview him. I said, do you want people to look into your lyrics and really dive in and make, look up in thesaurus what a word means, or do you want them to just listen and enjoy? And he said, think of it as a painting in a museum. Some people go up and they look at it and go, that's nice. And some people go up there and look at it for days, and the brush strokes and the way. He says, I do not consider one of those two different people greater than the other. No. I appreciate them both.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where we're at. So if you're in this, the video and you're like, oh man, I don't want to go that deep. I appreciate you listening to it and then move on to something else. That's fine. At least whatever it does to be received in your way, that's what counts. But usually when we dive into things like scripture or relationships, we find some pretty good things if it's from a source that we can trust. Anyway, there's a lot of songs out there where the sources, I don't know where they're coming from, and people put their whole lives into it and scream and shout and memorize, and you're just like, that's not a really healthy source. But I'm going to stop being on my soapbox on that one. So all that to say, we went from Hold Me Like Your Home, which is kind of the where are we, where did we go? And then we go into a second part of like, okay, this is where we're at. Let's just fight it out. Or let's not. Or this is kind of and now we go to the individual.